Welcome YouTube visitors and brothers and sisters in Christ. This is another edition of Around the World News. Okay, we got a lot to cover today. Might be longer than normal. So let's get right into it. Let's briefly talk about the markets. Precious metals, gold and silver were up strong today. Energy is overbought. Stock market indexes will turn technically bullish if support levels listed are decisively broken. So we should see silver move up, New Zealand dollar move up, natural gas move up, and orange juice move down. This newsletter that I read from covers a variety of commodities. As you know, everything's based upon commodities, real substances, not stocks, but food, corn, soybeans, wheat, things like that, sugar, beef, rice. All right, and all these things are going to get expensive in the future because we're going to have serious inflation, perhaps even hyperinflation. All right, let me scroll down to where we're getting into some of these articles. And let's see here. Hope you're having a good day today. It's been really hot lately out here in California, which is great for my garden because my corn is growing and my squash is growing. And it's been many years since I've grown either one. So it was nice to see them developing some fruit. Okay, so yeah, he's got a lot on oil. I don't know that you're interested in oil, but anyway. Crude oil comprises 87% of Saudi Arabia's revenue. 70% of Saudis work for the Saudi government, earning 1.7 times more than the private sector. Saudi Arabia is a welfare state. Saudi Arabia is running approaching a $100 billion a year deficit. The U.S. is now the largest crude oil producer behind Saudi Arabia and Russia. All right, so let me get into, and there's a lot of articles. I'm going to post them on the discussion page of my website. I don't really want to go over that right now. You can read those articles. There's some really good ones, though. Governor Brown never ceases to amaze me, these liberals who want to continually raise our taxes. Meanwhile, people like Michael Savage from the Savage Nation wonders why what Governor Brown is doing with all this money that's supposed to go for fixing the potholes, okay? The bridge in San Francisco, or the potholes in the streets of San Francisco and just all over California. I mean, are these politicians pocketing some of this money, perhaps? They don't seem to know how to manage other people's money. Perhaps they don't even know how to manage their own money. All right, here we go. Donald Trump is in the fight of his political life, and it's a fight he isn't prepared to win. Mainstream spies and leakers infest his administration and conspire with media heavyweights to produce a crisis a week that keeps Trump on the ragged edge of defense. But how can he fight a system where he lacks the details about how it operates? Much of it's his own fault. He doesn't have good people judgment, nor the essential spiritual discernment to know when he's being deceived and lied to. As a result, he's allowed himself to be surrounded by insiders, neocons, neoconservatives, globalists, and mainstream Republican operatives that are either part of the deep state or who don't have a clue about its existence. He has no one on his staff with an understanding of the conspiracy working against him. And because of that, every time a Trump loyalist like Michael Flynn is run out of Washington by media leaks, he ignorantly replaces him with an establishment insider. For example, H.R. McMaster. After Trump fired Comey for continuing investigations based upon false intelligence and Russian interference in the election, Trump's deputy AG hires former FBI director and insider Robert Mueller, who will deliver the same result. Trump is hopping mad about being betrayed by Comey, which came through as his main theme as he spoke to graduates of the Coast Guard Academy. He warned them to expect to be treated badly in life and that life is often unfair, but he naively concluded that everything will turn out right if you fight back. Sadly for Trump, everything isn't going to turn out right. All right, despite his fighting back blindly. His adversaries are legion and are backed by a secret hierarchy that can block him in the courts, in Congress, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and every other arm of government in power. With the appointment of Mueller elevated by special independent prosecutor, Trump is much worse off than before. It was stupid of Attorney General Sessions to recuse himself, having been pilloried by the press over some rather innocent contacts with the Russian ambassador. That left Deputy Attorney General Rod J. Rosenstein to do the bidding of the pack of ravenous Democrats calling for a special prosecutor on the Russian issue. Any true Trump ally who knew about the false claims of Russian interference would have picked a reliable non-insider who would have made short work of the superficial analysis heretofore inferred. But with the choice of Mueller, you know that Rosenstein is either an insider himself or an ignoramus. Really ignorant person, in other words. I'm betting on the former. He didn't have to heed the calls for a special prosecutor. He could have simply said, I've looked at the analysis of the NSA and CIA and find that it is highly speculative and not worthy of the time and expense of a special prosecutor. Instead, he said, I determined that it is in the public interest for me to exercise my authorities and appoint a special counsel to assume responsibility for this matter. My decision is not a finding that crimes have been committed or that any prosecution is warranted. I have made no such determination. Maybe not, but he has given free rein to an insider who will predictably deliver that determination. A special prosecutor has tremendous autonomy to run an investigation as he sees fit. And if the Vince Foster investigation is any indication, it will be an exercise in manufactured justification for something that didn't really happen, just to support government claims. You know Mueller is an insider by the way the New York Times offered glowing coverage. Yeah, because New York Times is establishment media, controlled by the globalists. Perhaps the most disturbing news of the week is that Senator Joe Lieberman heads the list of possible Trump replacements for Jim Comey as FBI director. Lieberman, a far-left Democrat, was Al Gore's running mate and a dedicated anti-Trump advocate. To even consider Lieberman as FBI director shows that Trump is beset with the false hope of placating Democrats by appointing his enemies to key positions. The claim that Trump revealed classified information to the Russians when Trump tried to enlist Russian support for banning laptops in the cabins of airliners flying out of certain countries, I say bizarre because none of the actual people present in the room leaked the information, and the Russians claim to have a transcript of what was said and have offered it to Congress. The fact that Congress has shown no interest in the Russian transcript shows the charge is highly suspect. Apparently, the intelligence about terrorist plans to put explosives into a laptop. I want to have this camera go. Okay. Explosives into a laptop and a suicide bomber carried aboard came from Israel, who is part of the deep state dark side of government. That claim in and of itself should not be classified. Only information as to success, methods, and agents involved. Media trotted out an array of experts, quote experts, who claim that if the source, Israel, was revealed, that would make our ally less willing to cooperate and share intelligence in the future. Hogwash. The Israeli deep state is joined at the hip with the globalist deep state, and it isn't about to go away if Trump mentioned that Israeli intelligence told us about this threat. The deep state is going into overdrive, trying to embarrass Trump and record him making an impeachable offense. Making an impeachable offense. That is why they are spying on everything Trump does. Comey knew this, and that's another reason Trump fired him. As Patrick Howley, editor-in-chief of Big League Politics, relates, Comey covered up evidence as deep state spying on Trump. Deep state spying on Trump. The deep state threatened Donald Trump is real. The deep state threat to Donald Trump is real, and he's woefully unprepared to combat this giant conspiracy. I can't see any indication from Trump's behavior that he has anyone advising him that understands the details of this globalist conspiracy. and especially the United States and British black operations that create, arm, and fund terrorist groups, including ISIS, even though it's obvious that Trump has some superficial understanding of various conspiracies. He got those ideas from quick and superficial readings on the internet. He clearly doesn't know any of the details, including major players in the globalist network. Otherwise, he wouldn't have referred to Henry Kissinger as an old friend, nor would he have said how wonderful Dick Cheney is. Exactly. It's so true, folks. Listen up. The big question, why, if Trump is making so many errors and giving in to so many of their demands, are the powers that be, PTB, still trying to get rid of him? Perhaps the main reason is that the globalists want total control wherever government power exists. They cannot tolerate losing even one battle in their overall agenda. So even though Trump has compromised on most of his campaign promises, he's still doing some things right and getting in the way of the globalist agenda. Yeah, he probably wants to save his life. He wants to live a little longer. You know what they did to John F. Kennedy? John F. Kennedy fired, who was it? Alan Dulles, who was the director of the CIA, I think. I mean, he created a lot of enemies, John F. Kennedy. Through Executive Order 11110, he was trying to abolish the Federal Reserve System, which is controlled by the global elite or the establishment. That's how they add or detract from the money supply, create inflation and depression and so on, and protect their own interests, because the Federal Reserve is not, there's nothing federal about it. It's a private banking cartel. There's no reserves there, and it's to protect the private international bankers. It started in 1913. Look it up. The Creature from Jekyll Island was written, I forgot the guy that wrote the book, but read that book, or at least read up the reviews about that book. Trump orders the let's see, one, he's done the right thing by aiming at the Kurds. Here's a few examples. He's done the right thing by aiming at the Kurds in northern Syria, who are the most effective fighting force in North Syria against ISIS, and a key ally in the battle against ISIS, headquarters in RAQQA, however you pronounce that. 2. Trump authorized access to federal immigration records for a commission on voter integrity. 3. Trump orders the national electric grid to prepare against cyber attacks. Of course, we now know that the deep state, using its army of hackers inside the NSA and CIA, is the biggest threat of cyber attack, and that is why the government, under controlled puppet presidents, has never pressed to see the electric grid protected against either cyber attack or electric magnetic pulse, either solar or nuclear. Trump is willing to work towards greater protection, knowing that if something happens on his watch, it would stymie any positive things he wants to do in the country. The United States is the biggest user of cyber attacks, unquote. That's by Joel Skousen, former U.S. military intelligence officer and fighter pilot. You can find that in his World Affairs Brief, dated May 19, 2017. All right, we are witnessing an assault by the national security state and its liberal media on a president of the United States, and it's unprecedented. Wild and unsupported accusations of treasonous or illegal Russian connections have been the mainstay of the news since Trump's campaign for president. These accusations have reached the point that there is an impeachment movement driven by the national security state and its liberal media, and endorsed by Democrats. The American left wing, which has turned against the working class, has Trump deplorables and luminaries such as Harvard law professor Larry Tribe. The Washington Post, which was not present at the meeting of President Trump with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, purports to know that Trump gave Lavrov U.S. national security information. The Russian government has offered the prostitute media, combination between the press and prostitute, media, a transcript of the meeting. But of course, the prostitutes are not interested. The latest story is that Trump tried to bribe FBI Director Comey before he fired him, not to investigate Trump as part of the Russian investigation. Clearly, there's no intelligence left in the American media. There's no proof of any of this, people. They're just trying to set up Trump and make him look bad. Trump, being in real estate and entertainment, was unaware of the landmines on which he was stepping when he said it was time to normalize relations with Russia and to rethink the purpose of NATO. The U.S. military security complex sits on a budget extracted from very hard-pressed American taxpayers of $1,000 billion annually. By threatening to normalize relations with the enemy, which was created in order to justify the vast budget Trump presented as a major threat to the American national security, state's power, and profit. This is why Trump will be broken and or removed as president of the United States. Yeah, you know, they'll either impeach him, he'll resign because he'll be forced to, knowing that it's his life, or they'll kill him. Folks better wake up if you don't believe this is possible. Once again, democracy in America is proving to be powerless. Well, we really don't have a democracy, people. We have a republic, a government of law. There is no one in Washington who can help Trump. Those who could help him, such as myself, cannot be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, which is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the military security complex, Wall Street, and the Israel lobby. Trump tried to connect the suffering American people to their government, an act of treason against the oligarchy, who are making an example of Trump that will dissuade politicians in the future from making populist appeals to the people, unquote. So says Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, in an article entitled The Assault on Trump. That's from paulcraigroberts.org, found May 18th. All right. 22%. Here's an interesting fact. 25% of Americans don't believe in God. They're atheists. And then what about they'll come out and tell you that they don't believe in God. But then there's a lot of people, perhaps another 25% or maybe more, maybe 50%, who live as though God doesn't exist because they're lawless and they practice sin. Is that you? You know, we ought to fear God. To fear the Lord is depart from evil. The fear of the Lord is to depart from evil, the Bible says. Only 17% of Christians actually have a biblical world view. This confirms the perspective of eminent Catholic scholar and historian Dr. E. Michael Jones. Dr. E. Michael Jones, whose research found that the United States was captured globally by its Gaia-worshipping feminist collectivist archenemy, witchcraft/Hollywood, the wood of witchcraft. In 1976, following the God is Dead revolution of the 60s. Back in the 1850s, 100 years earlier, Christian theologians warned that the rational maturity generated by the law school of the church was being replaced by the immature emotionalism of the theater. The Jewish atheistic communism of Karl Marx, 1848, and the naturalism of Charles Darwin, 1859, followed by the tyrant Lincoln's 1860s War of Northern Aggression, the so-called Civil War, severed the religious and political roots of Western Christian civilization. Herzl, Zionism, late 1800s. Sartre, 1905 to 1980, and the atheistic Jewish Frankfurt School, multiculturalism, communism by other means, Marx plus Freud, 1923. Finished off Western Christian civilization and individualism, personal worth, freedom, and widespread prosperity, with 911 firmly establishing the deep state globalists as gods. Well, that's what they want to be. They take to themselves this unmitigated power through fiat money that they create through the Federal Reserve, and that's because they want to be God. They swallow the lie of Satan. You shall be as gods, determining or knowing or determining for yourself what is God, what is right, rather. And that's why we have so many man-made laws today through the Federal Register. You and I are guilty of some felony somewhere that you and I aren't even aware of. There's just too many laws to keep track, and even the average lawyer, even a good lawyer, cannot keep up with all the laws. He has to refer to his law books. And that's why we have lawyers that specialize today. They can't possibly know everything.